I am the most snobbish young lady in the wealthy family. When my poor fiancé came to my door, my nanny's daughter tried her best to persuade me to call off the engagement. Just as I was about to agree, barges suddenly appeared in front of my eyes. LOL. The female lead is so scheming. She tricked the young lady into calling off the engagement, and then privately helped the male lead. It's just because she knew that the male lead would become the richest person in the world. The male lead is extremely loyal. He married the female lead out of gratitude for the past kindness and made her one of the most honorable women in the world. The young lady went bankrupt, had to sell herself to pay off the debts, and was finally toyed with and died. I was shocked and then furious. No one can take away my chance to be extremely wealthy. So, in the angry gaze of my nanny's daughter, I urgently stopped the male lead who was about to leave disappointedly and said, "I can let you stay by my side, but you have just sworn to be loyal to me for a lifetime." Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Just now, my rural fiancé with a baby engagement came to my door. The teenager was over 1.8 meters tall, but he was wearing ill-fitting cropped pants. The cuffs were a bit short. His fair and thin ankles were reluctantly exposed. Looking down, he was wearing a pair of white canvas shoes that were almost frayed from washing. They seemed to be quite old. I felt disdain in my heart. Moving my gaze up, it landed on the nervous face of the teenager. "What did you just say?" My casual question put great pressure on the teenager. He nervously tugged at the hem of his clothes and repeated what he had just said with difficulty. I want to ask you to sponsor me to finish high school. Just because. We have a baby engagement. Later, I will find a way to pay you back." After saying that, the teenager quickly lowered his eyes, looking like a homeless dog waiting for the judgment and decision of its master, exuding a sense of dejection. Before I could speak, my personal nanny, Betty, leaned into my ear and said, "Miss, I told you, this so-called baby engagement is not acceptable at all. He had the nerve to come here and ask for money before the official engagement. Who knows how insatiable he will be in the future? Unlike Elvis, who always thinks of you. You can take this opportunity to call off the engagement with the old master. Then he has no reason to stop you from being with Elvis." I deeply agreed. Just as I was about to speak along with her, barges suddenly appeared in front of my eyes. The male lead is so pitiful. He finally mustered up the courage to ask the young lady for help, but he didn't know that he would only be rejected. The male lead is proud and unyielding. If he wasn't desperate, he would never use the baby engagement as a bargaining chip to ask for money. LOL. The female lead is so scheming. She tricked the young lady into calling off the engagement and then privately helped the male lead just because she knew that the male lead was a hidden dragon. She wanted to repay the favor. The young lady went bankrupt, had to sell herself to pay off the debts, and was finally toyed with and died. At that moment, I was shocked, but more than that, I felt it was absurd. Cecilia, am the most profit-oriented young lady in the wealthy family in City A. The barges said that I would be tricked by a little nanny and end up dying a miserable death. Is this a joke? However, as soon as this thought came up, I saw the barges being refreshed. In this novel, I like the character of the young lady the most. She is ambitious and self-centered, which is the image of a strong female lead that I like. The female lead took advantage of this and successfully intercepted the relationship between the male lead and the young lady. Otherwise, the young lady would have become the wife of the richest person in the world. I stared fixedly at the words, "the richest person in the world," and the shock in my heart turned into great anger. A mere nanny actually wants to take away my chance to become the richest person. Absolutely not. After Betty whispered to me, she turned to the teenager and said condescendingly, "Our young lady always only talks about interests and ignores feelings. As for the baby engagement, do you think our young lady cares about it? It's just a joke from the older generation. If you still have some sense of shame, leave quickly. Don't stand here like a beggar." Betty's attitude was bad, but what her words revealed was my arrogance. The teenager was already self-conscious. After hearing these words, he felt even more humiliated. He clenched his fists tightly and buried his head, preparing to leave. Just then, I urgently called out to him, "Stop." I slowly got up from the sofa and walked straight towards the teenager. With a sharp look in my eyes and a scrutinizing gaze, I exuded an aura that made it clear I wasn't someone to be trifled with. Seeing this, Betty thought I was going to deal with him and continued to spare no effort to ruin my image in front of him. "You were told to leave, but you didn't. Now the young lady has to deal with you. You won't get away with it." After saying that, she stared intently at me, expecting me to humiliate the teenager severely. She wanted to act as a confidant to soothe the teenager's wounded heart after his disappointment and gain some favor. Unfortunately, I didn't give her this chance. I approached the teenager and said, "I can agree to your request, and I can even cover all the expenses of your university studies. But I have a condition." Hearing this, Betty's face froze. "Miss, you." I ignored her shock and just stared indifferently at the back of the teenager, waiting for his choice. "What?" The teenager didn't turn around. Obviously, he didn't hold any hope. The next second, I said, "I hate unfaithful people. Since you've taken my money, you belong to me. You must be wholeheartedly loyal to me for a lifetime, and you can't betray or disobey me. Otherwise, I will never forgive you." My attitude was haughty, and my words carried a threat. But the teenager accepted it without hesitation and swore to guarantee. "I swear to be wholeheartedly loyal to you for a lifetime, without betraying or disobeying you. Otherwise, I will die without a burial place." I don't know why the plot has changed, but the young lady is so far-sighted. The male lead's moral level is incredibly high. Once he makes a promise, he will fulfill it for a lifetime. I glanced at the barrages, then retracted my gaze with satisfaction and ordered the butler, "Take him down and settle him." I watched Damien leave, but Betty's dissatisfied shouting rang in my ears. "Miss, you kept Damien. Have you thought about how to explain it to Elvis? You just accepted his affection. Even if you are willful, you shouldn't be so two-faced." She looked indignant, and her eyes looking at me were filled with obvious condemnation. I wasn't angry. I calmly retorted, "Who do you think you are? How dare you tell me what to do?" With this light sentence, Betty was left speechless. She looked sad, as if she had eaten a fly. "Great." The young lady scolded her. "I've disliked her for a long time. The female lead's whole family relies on the young lady to live a superior life, but she secretly makes trouble. What's the difference between her and an ungrateful person? Yes, we don't need a female lead with a wrong view of right and wrong." The barrages were full of approval. I curved my lips and left happily, leaving Betty alone, glaring resentfully at my back. Betty is the daughter of my nanny, but she has lived with me since childhood. She enjoys a much higher status than ordinary people. It's just because her father stood up for me when I was in danger. I was safe, but he became paraplegic because of it. Looking at him lying dying in the hospital bed, I asked, "How do you want me to repay you?" Betty's father said, "I don't ask for anything else. I just hope my wife and daughter can live without worrying about food and clothing." Only then did I know. The reason why Betty's father risked his life to block the disaster for me was that he was already terminally ill. He resolutely sacrificed his life to secure a bright future for his wife and daughter. Facts have proved that he succeeded. With this life-saving grace in front of me, even though I know through the barrages that Betty has ulterior motives, I can't easily abandon her. Otherwise, I will face severe criticism from the outside world. Betty clearly knows this too. The next day, she came to apologize to me. "Miss, I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken to you so harshly yesterday." Betty seemed sincere, as if she was extremely regretful. In the past, I would have let it go. But this time, I said casually, "Is that all?" And I shouldn't have guessed her intentions without permission. She said hesitantly, "I rejected it outright." "You're wrong." Betty's face froze. I leaned forward and patted her face, reminding her, Betty, although your father has a favor with me, your status is just that of a nanny. Who I like and who I choose is none of your business. How dare you interfere? There was a strong warning in my words. Betty felt embarrassed and lowered her head, holding back a sob as she said, Sorry, miss. I won't do it again. Her attitude of apology seemed sincere, but in fact, there was unwillingness and humiliation hidden in it. This unwillingness and humiliation eventually turned into resentment and anger towards me. But so what? Betty made me unhappy. I will take revenge right now. Betty maintained a half-bent posture for a long time, until she could barely hold on and her weak body trembled slightly. Then I lazily said, All right. Why are you being so serious? I was just joking with you. This time, Betty was smarter. She forced a smile and said, No, miss. You're not wrong. It's just that I didn't know my place. Good that you know. I waved my hand. Go and rest. Aren't you going to the hospital to see your father tomorrow? Betty bowed respectfully to me and then left. The female lead is narrow-minded. After being humiliated by the young lady today, she will definitely find a way to take revenge. Can't we just drive her away? The one upstairs. I'm afraid it's not possible. The female lead is known as the daughter of the person who saved the young lady's life. The barges were discussing heatedly. I was also thinking, is there any way to eliminate future troubles? I hate this feeling of being passive. Just as I was worried, the butler came. He handed me a document. Miss, this is what you asked me to investigate. I have always been curious. Damien, as the male lead, is a genius. What on earth made him break his pride and use a dispensable baby engagement to ask me for help? Until I saw the miserable situation of his home with my own eyes. The alley was narrow and dim, on the low and dilapidated walls on both sides. Ivy grew. It had just rained. There were puddles all over the uneven ground. I stepped on it. Suddenly, mud splashed. It dirted my snow-white skirt. The butler frowned and suggested, Miss, why don't you let me go? You can wait in the car. No need. I refused. When it comes to winning people's hearts, it's better to do it personally. Enduring the discomfort, I lifted my skirt and continued walking in. Soon, I arrived at Damien's door. His elderly grandmother was struggling to squat on the ground, washing clothes with her sallow and bony hands. The information showed that Damien's mother was unlucky in love. After being cheated out of all her property by her gambling husband, she was completely disappointed in love. She even hated her own son. In the cold winter, the little Damien was thrown into the trash can. When he was almost frozen to death, his grandmother staggered and carried him home step by step and raised him with spoonfuls of rice soup. Up to now, his mother has never fulfilled her responsibility as a mother. Instead, she has squandered all the family property. Among them was the money that his grandmother had painstakingly saved to treat his aunt who had ALS. Damien once thought about dropping out of school and working, but his grandmother slapped him awake and scolded. She's my responsibility, not yours. How can you ruin your life because of her? Don't worry. I won't let anyone drag you down. When I die, I will take your aunt with me. When Damien was desperate, he suddenly remembered the existence of this baby engagement. He had the nerve to come to my door. Girl, who are you? I stood at the entrance of the alley for a long time, until the grandmother noticed my presence. I smiled a perfect smile and took the initiative to approach. Introducing myself. Grandma, I'm Cecilia. Hearing this name, she was slightly surprised. You've grown up. I hummed and glanced at the mountain of clothes beside her feet. Immediately, the bodyguard understood and stepped forward to take the washboard and the laundry basin, intending to take over her work. His family was so poor that they couldn't afford a washing machine. They had to wash clothes in the most primitive way. The grandmother was a bit at a loss and politely declined. No, I can do it myself. When Damien came back, he happened to see this scene. What are you doing to my grandmother? Because of the angle. He misunderstood that the bodyguard had ill intentions towards his grandmother. He rushed over quickly and firmly protected his grandmother behind him, his gaze vigilant and his posture on guard. It was completely different from the obedient appearance when he said he would be loyal to me the other day. It seemed that his claws hadn't been polished clean. I stared at him in silence, our eyes engaged in a battle, neither of us willing to give in. Are they going to have a misunderstanding? Please don't be cruel. The young lady hates it when others provoke her. But the male lead is overly cautious when it comes to his grandmother and aunt. Just when the barges thought that there would be a rift between the two of us, the grandmother pushed him aside and scolded. The young lady's man was just being kind and helping me wash the clothes. Why are you so excited? Only then did Damien notice that the bodyguard was holding old clothes. He was at a loss for words. But I didn't want to listen to his explanation. I turned around with a cold expression. Before getting in the car, I instructed the butler, take back all of Damien's privileges. In an instant, Damien's life fell from heaven to hell. But as the barges said, his moral level was extremely high. If it were someone narrow-minded, they would have already harbored resentment. Not only did he not, but he was extremely guilty. He was single-mindedly thinking of admitting his mistake and apologizing to me. But we were from different classes. If I didn't take the initiative to meet him, he couldn't find out where I was. Occasionally, when we met at school, he mustered up the courage to talk to me. But I was like a queen surrounded by many people. A group of people would quickly gather around me and push him to an inconspicuous corner. Then he could only watch as I was left like a queen, and he could only gaze at my back alone. Out of reach, Betty was like a ghost, silently approaching him from behind and saying, "See, Cecilia is so moody. 1 second she can make you feel like you're in heaven, and the next second she can send you to hell. Moreover, Cecilia values profit over affection. She already has the young Master Elvis who is a good match for her by her side. She will never like you. Damn it. The female lead is trying to sow discord again. The young lady. Please go and don't let her scheme succeed." The barges were worried about me, but I was indifferent. We had an agreement. I give the money, and he gives his loyalty. If he was unsettled and easily influenced by others because of my neglect, it would show that he wasn't that great. And I treat those who are unfaithful. I would rather die than compromise. Fortunately, Damien didn't disappoint me. He looked in my direction and said, "So what? I'm willing to endure it." Did the young lady hear that? The most loyal confession from the puppy. The barges were crazy about our relationship. I smiled with satisfaction and turned to leave. Since Damien revealed his true feelings, the barges every day were, "Make up. I'm begging you." But the timing wasn't right yet. After school that day, as soon as I got in the car, the barges suddenly said, "Help. Young lady. The male lead is being bullied in the toilet." What? I was shocked. I immediately took the bodyguards and returned to the school. Cloudy no. One middle school was an elite school. It covered a large area. It took some time to find him. When I arrived, Damien had already been beaten down. Someone stepped on his back, waist, and legs. He was suppressed firmly and had no power to fight back. The leader squatted in front of him and turned his face to look at him. "No wonder Miss Cecilia made an exception and kept you. Your face is quite something. But who told your rival to be young Master G?" As he spoke, he took out a dagger. "Tell me, where should I start?" The blade was shiny. It reflected the angry eyes of the teenager. The man warned, "Think of your family before you resist. Which is more important, them or your face?" Hearing this, the tense muscles of Damien suddenly relaxed. "That's a good boy." The man smiled triumphantly. He gestured with the dagger. Just as the blade was about to fall, I arrived with the bodyguards and stopped the one-sided bullying in time. The man looked up and was startled to see me. The dagger dropped with a clang. The group of people were trembling. "Miss Cecilia. Miss Cecilia. When did you dare to touch someone who belongs to me?" afraid of my anger. They honestly revealed the mastermind. Miss Cecilia. It was young Master G's order. Elvis. Very well. I sneered. All of you. Get lost. Suddenly, the group of people felt as if they had been pardoned and ran away in a hurry. Only Damien, who was covered in injuries, was left on the spot. I glanced at him and instructed the butler, "Take care of him." When I turned around, someone grabbed the hem of my dress from behind. I was displeased. "Take your dirty hands away." Damien was deeply hurt by the disgust in my eyes. "I just want to say sorry. I misunderstood you last time." "Humph. If I cared about this all the time, you would drive me to death sooner or later." It was only Damien who held a grudge from beginning to end. He realized something and lowered his long eyelashes dejectedly. "My poor little couple has a rough fate. Why haven't they made up yet?" The Barges were eager for our relationship to develop. But I was a businesswoman. I would never do a losing business. I wanted Damien to submit to me, both physically and mentally. After this bullying incident, my relationship with Damien didn't improve. Instead, I drove him to the most remote servant's room. But privately, I ordered someone to take his grandmother and aunt to the hospital for treatment. The butler told Damien everything. "The young lady is just cold-natured. In fact, she has a softer heart than anyone else." His grandmother and aunt were Damien's weak points. If I controlled them, I could control Damien. After hearing the butler's words, his heart was in turmoil. "Please thank the young lady for me." But Betty didn't know the inside story. She thought I had completely abandoned him and hypocritically came over. "Miss, when you saved Damien in the toilet last time, you were essentially admitting that he is your fiancé in public. Now that you've made him live there, isn't it too unfair to him?" I just realized that Betty's acting skills were terribly bad. She thought she had an opportunity and came to test my attitude. The complacency in her eyes didn't hide at all. I glanced at her. "Do you want to switch places with him?" Her face froze, and she forced a smile. I didn't mean that." "Then shut up." I casually played with my newly done manicure. "Remember your place and don't meddle in things." My patience was limited. The favor of saving my life couldn't be a get-out-of-jail-free card forever. Unfortunately, Betty wouldn't give up. That night, I deliberately had the most shabby meal sent to Damien. It was even worse than pig food. Through the surveillance, I saw the teenager calmly pick it up and was about to eat it. At the critical moment, Betty rushed out angrily and slapped the food away. "It's all spoiled. You can't eat it." She glanced at the mess on the floor, and a look of distress appeared in her eyes. "Even if the young lady doesn't like you, she shouldn't treat you like this, right?" The teenager lowered his eyelashes, and his voice was low and indifferent. "She didn't." But Betty was stubbornly living in her own delusion. She took out an exquisite lunchbox. When she lifted the lid, a rich aroma wafted out. She held a bowl of bird's nest porridge with self-moving. "Don't be afraid of the young lady's targeting. I will be your strongest backing." She naively thought she could move Damien. But Damien took half a step back, and the hem of his clothes formed a cold arc. "Thank you. But no. I'm fine." Betty was in a crazy state and pressed on. "No. You need it. Damien. We are both people who have fallen on hard times. Only I understand the pain of having your family destroyed and being homeless." "Family destroyed. Homeless." Damien suddenly laughed. "Are you sure? As far as I know, your mother is living in the most expensive and luxurious nursing home in the capital. Your sister is studying abroad, and the young lady is paying for her tuition and living expenses. And you, since you've been by the young lady's side since childhood, you're even higher than others. Now that you say these things, do you want to bite the hand that feeds you?" Damien stared at her sharply. Betty felt guilty under his gaze and then became angry. She shouted, "Don't make her seem so noble. She did these things only because she was saved by my father and had no choice." "Damn it. It's really making me angry. A gentleman judges by actions, not by motives. The young lady has done a good job. Betty is so ungrateful. The barrages were full of scolding, but the corners of my lips lifted. I walked in stepping on the last ray of the sunset. My lazy voice drifted in the wind. Since you think so, I might as well take back all the sponsorship for your family. Anyway, everyone knows that I'm a profit-oriented person. I don't mind being called ungrateful. Betty was also stubborn. She glared at me and said firmly, "Take it back then. Do you think I care?" She didn't care. But her mother and sister did. When the two who heard this bad news rushed back as fast as they could, they forced Betty to come in front of me and admit her mistake. "Kneel down and kowtow to the young lady to admit your mistake." Her mother had a fierce expression and tightly twisted her arm, shouting the order. Betty refused to obey. She raised her head with tears in her eyes. "Mom, can't you have some backbone? All people are born equal. Why should we grovel in front of her? Just because she's rich?" Betty's hoarse voice was full of unwillingness. I chuckled. "So being rich is a mistake?" I said. "I won't force you. From now on, your family of 3 has nothing to do with me. As for the favor your father did for me, I'll have to repay him in my next life." Betty stuck out her neck. "Fine." I couldn't ask for more. Before she finished speaking, her sister, who had been silent, suddenly lashed out and kicked her in the knee. "Miss, this is all her delusion. It has nothing to do with us." Betty's knee hit the ground heavily, and she shouted in a trembling voice, "Sister." Her sister slapped her. "Shut up. Don't drag me and Mom down because of you." Her mother also came to her senses and nodded quickly. "She's an ungrateful person, but we have always remembered your kindness." Betty was completely stunned. She never thought that the family she trusted and relied on would betray her. But the truth was that when it came to interests, people often made the most self-serving choices. After dealing with Betty's matter, I went to see Damien. In the dim morning light, the teenager was holding an English textbook and reading in a low voice. The teenager's voice was as clear as a stream, flowing quietly in the mist. Crunch. I deliberately stepped on a withered branch, studying so hard. He turned around suddenly and stood up nervously. Miss Cecilia." The teenager tried to act calm, but his nervous action of rubbing the pages of the book revealed his youth. Suddenly, I had the intention to tease him. I walked towards him, stepping on the morning dew. My fingertips suddenly grabbed the collar of his white shirt and pushed him against the wall. "I heard you got the first place in the math exam yesterday." My thumb rubbed the fabric at his collarbone, feeling his muscles tense up instantly. The teenager's ears turned red as if bleeding, and his eyelashes trembled as he nodded. His messy breath hit the back of my hand. "Good job." I leaned close to his hot earlobe, and my breath gently brushed against it. "Remember, your glory." My lips almost brushed against his ear. "Is my glory." Under the deliberately ambiguous threat, his Adam's apple rolled unbearably, and the textbook fell to the ground with a snap. "Help. This is not a lecture at all. It's flirting." His hand that dropped the textbook is shaking. "Miss Cecilia, strangle him with the tie. Please." The barrages were too explicit. I couldn't bear to look at them. I helplessly retracted my gaze and got back to business. "There's a banquet tomorrow. You'll accompany me to it." It was Elvis's 20th birthday party. Most of the celebrities in City A were invited. If I didn't go, I would seem too unique, although I didn't care about their opinions. When I appeared with Damien on my arm, it immediately caused a burst of snickering. "Miss Cecilia is really with a poor boy. I thought it was just a rumor. Young Master G has been chasing her for so long but couldn't get her. I thought Miss Cecilia had high standards. But this is it." People were talking, and their words were filled with contempt and ridicule for Damien. It greatly soothed the resentment in Elvis's heart. "Cecilia." He held a champagne glass and walked towards me, pretending to be elegant. "What do you think of that project?" I was invited by Elvis to participate in this project. "Miss, don't agree. It's a trap that Elvis set for you on purpose. In the original work, your family went bankrupt because of this project." I lowered my long eyelashes to hide the tremor in my eyes. When I looked up again, I put on a brighter smile. Sorry. My fiancé doesn't like me getting too close to others. Damien's body tensed up instantly, and his ears turned red. Even his neck was covered with a thin layer of blush. Elvis's face darkened. You're rejecting me for this poor boy. Poor boy. I gently stroked Damien's tie and deliberately helped him straighten the non-existent wrinkles. I bet that within 3 years, he will make you look up to him. So, put away your dirty thoughts. Otherwise, I'll make you pay for it. I raised my eyes and swept the entire room. My gaze was like a blade quenched in ice. It scraped inch by inch over those who had once trampled Elvis into the mud. They all lowered their heads in shame and fear, their bodies shaking. And Elvis, who was the culprit, had an even uglier expression on his face. His hand holding the wineglass tightened. His knuckles turned blue from the force. In the car on the way home, Damien kept his head lowered. The neon lights outside the car window passed over his profile, casting flickering lights and shadows on his tightly pursed lips. I thought he was blaming me for not punishing those who had bullied him. Rarely did I soften my tone and explain. Some grudges need to be avenged with your own hands to be truly satisfying. However, the teenager suddenly interrupted me. Why are you so good to me? He raised his head, his eyes shining with a stubborn light. It was very bright. It almost blinded my eyes. We stared at each other for a while, and I suddenly sneered. Don't flatter yourself. I'm just investing in the future. Hearing this, the teenager lowered his eyes in disappointment. Ah, the young lady is being duplicitous. I don't believe you're not getting emotionally involved. The barges refused to accept it and desperately found reasons for me. But is being attracted so simple? For the rest of the journey, Damien and I didn't speak. When we were about to get out of the car, I raised my hand to stop him. Rather than dwelling on these useless things, you'd better think about how to stay by my side longer. All I needed from beginning to end was Damien, who could help me become the richest person in the world, not a fool stuck in love. In the following days, Damien threw himself into his studies, almost to the point of forgetting to eat and sleep. The college entrance examination arrived as scheduled. I personally drove him to the examination site. The car stopped outside the examination site, surrounded by bustling examinees and parents. The early summer sun shone through the car window and landed on his tense profile. When he was about to get out of the car, he suddenly grabbed my hand, his palm burning hot. Miss, I will prove that your choice was not wrong. The teenager raised his eyes, and there was a fire burning in his eyes, shining brightly. My heart skipped a beat, as if burned by that temperature. I quickly averted my eyes and didn't dare to look directly into his scorching gaze. My fingertips curled slightly, and I forcefully withdrew my hand, coughing lightly. Don't let me down. My tone was still cold, but the end of my sentence revealed a hint of instability. Damien smiled, his beautiful eyebrows and eyes relaxing. I won't. He opened the car door and got out, his steps brisk. But just as he took a step, he suddenly turned around and called me. Cecilia. What? I instinctively looked up, only to see him lean in suddenly. His warm lips unexpectedly pressed against my cheek, and then he pulled away. I froze instantly, my mind going blank. Only the place he had kissed was like being scorched by sparks. The heat spread rapidly, and even the tips of my ears tingled with heat. Ah, the CPM shipping finally has some sweet moments. The puppy has the guts to secretly kiss the young lady. There was no doubt. Damien became the top scorer in science in the province. In the end, he followed in my footsteps and chose Harvard. On the day the admission notice arrived, I took the opportunity to announce my engagement to him. As soon as the news came out, the stock price soared. My father stopped me in the study and hoped I would think carefully. Cecilia, marriage is not a business. He's worth it. I said so. If you want to get something, you always have to offer corresponding chips. But my actions angered Elvis. The Elvis family has joined forces with 2 other companies to encircle and suppress our family. My father rubbed his temples with a headache. Our port project has been suspended, and the new energy sector has been maliciously shorted. But I was at ease. Dad, don't worry. This play has just reached the exciting part. My father didn't understand the deep meaning of my words and was just about to ask in detail. But then I turned and looked out the floor-to-ceiling window. In the garden, Damien was leaning against the ginkgo tree, making a phone call. The teenager's slender figure was stretched out by the setting sun. The corner of his white shirt was lifted by the evening wind, revealing his slender waist. As if he had sensed my gaze, he suddenly turned his head and made an "okay" gesture to me through the glass. I had the perspective of a god, and with Damien by my side, how could I let my family follow the old path of going bankrupt and being in debt as in the original work? I had been plotting for a long time. Elvis thought he had forced my family into a desperate situation. Little did he know that this was just a strategy to lure the enemy in. Sure enough, the two companies turned against Elvis at a crucial moment. Elvis was caught off guard. He was dealt a heavy blow. He invested large sums of money, but ended up with a miserable outcome. On the large screen of the stock exchange, the stock price of the Elvis family plummeted. Elvis kept calling my phone, until the missed calls accumulated to over 99. Only then did I deign to answer. Your family's group is on the verge of collapse. And instead of finding a way to save it, Elvis, what do you want by constantly harassing me? Cecilia, you're a venomous person. Elvis roared angrily, his voice hoarse with the brink of collapse. I slapped the acquisition contract on the desk. I leaned forward slightly and looked down at him with disdain, sneering. Likewise, Elvis, don't you dare say you didn't want to set a trap for me. Business is like a battlefield. There are silent swords and shadows everywhere. If it weren't for the barge's reminder last time, I would have stepped into the mud. Rather than raging uselessly here, you'd better think about how to explain the $3 billion deficit to the board of directors. Elvis's ending was already doomed. The day his company was acquired by me, I handed the contract to Damien. It's yours. As soon as I said this, the barges went crazy. The young lady is generous. She gave a whole group. I really want to possess the male lead's body. What has he done to deserve this? Damien was even more overwhelmed with surprise, his thin lips trembling with excitement. Miss, I shattered his illusions. Don't get me wrong. You're just working for me. Even so, my ability to recognize talent and the kindness of discovering his potential were worth Damien remembering deeply. He would repay me with his whole life. A few years passed, and the reorganized Elvis family group was managed brilliantly by Damien. It had grown to a considerable scale. Legends about him were spreading everywhere. The media praised him as the youngest business godfather. He had the nerve to ask for money before the official engagement. Who knows how insatiable he'll be in the future? In the midst of the cheers, Damien suddenly knelt down on one knee and held out a velvet box. Miss, do I have the qualification to propose to you? Inside the box was a diamond ring, shining brightly in the sunlight. I recognized it as the pink diamond that was sold at a sky-high price at the recent auction. But all the money Damien had earned over the years had gone into my account. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Where did you get the money? Damien smiled. Do you remember the first living expenses you gave me? I used it for some investments. It turned out that when I didn't know, this caged dragon had quietly taken off. I deliberately made things difficult for him. What if I say no? Then I will keep waiting until the day you're willing to say yes. In the afterglow of the setting sun, the young man, who had long since shed his youth, had eyes full of tenderness and piety. I snorted twice and proudly stretched out my hand. Put it on for me. Congratulations. It's a happy ending. The young lady finally found happiness. Later, Damien indeed became the richest person in the world, as the barges said, and Betty was imprisoned for selling business secrets. During this period, Elvis tried to fight back, but he was forcefully suppressed by Damien. As for me, of course, I can be the wife of the richest person with peace of mind and continue to be Miss Cecilia, who makes people tremble with fear. After all, the best way to tame a wolf is to become a more ferocious beast than him. The end.